The junkyard fleet. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the UES recycler, watching another piece of space junk drift past the viewports. The twisted metal fragment had once been part of a Zephyrian cruiser, now reduced to scrap after some long-forgotten battle. This was humanity's job in the Galactic Federation, cleaning up everyone else's mess. 50 years had passed since humanity joined the Federation, and they were still treated like the new kids who got stuck with chores. While the elegant Altarian ships patrolled important trade routes, and the mighty Krogan vessels guarded core worlds, human crews were assigned to salvage duty. They collected debris, recycled old hulks, and kept the space lanes clear of hazards. Elena had once commanded a proper warship in Earth's defense force, leading missions to protect human colonies from pirates and raiders. That was before the Federation absorbed Earth's military and decided that humans were better suited for waste management operations. The transition had been polite but firm. Humanity's aggressive nature and unpredictable tactics made them unsuitable for prestigious assignments. The bridge crew of the recycler reflected humanity's diversity. Chief Engineer Kofi Asant monitored the ship's systems from his station, his dark hands flying over controls that managed the massive cargo bays and processing equipment. Kofi had designed robots for mining operations back on Earth before the Federation decided that human automation was too crude for galactic standards. At the weapons console sat Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a quantum physicist who had been developing new shield technologies when humanity joined the Federation. The aliens had studied her work with polite interest before filing it away as interesting but impractical. Now she spent her days operating the cutting beams that sliced salvage into manageable pieces. Navigator Lieutenant Ben Two Eagles plotted courses through debris fields with an intuition that amazed even veteran alien pilots. His ancestors had tracked buffalo across the Great Plains, and he carried that same connection to navigation patterns through the stars. The Federation's computer-dependent navigation systems couldn't match his instinctive understanding of three-dimensional movement. "Captain," Ben called from his station, "I'm picking up something unusual in Sector 7. Big piece of wreckage, but the composition readings don't match any known Federation vessel types." Elena moved to look over his shoulder at the sensor display. The object was massive, easily the size of a battleship, but its energy signature was completely unfamiliar. More interesting were the smaller debris pieces surrounding it, all showing the same unknown material composition. "How long has it been drifting out there?" Elena asked. Ben ran calculations through his console. "Based on trajectory and stellar drift patterns, I'd say at least 1,000 years, maybe more. Whatever battle created this debris field happened long before any of the current Federation species achieved spaceflight." Elena felt a familiar excitement building in her chest. This was the kind of discovery that made salvage duty worthwhile. Ancient alien technology often contained innovations that current species had never developed. The Federation encouraged humans to report such finds immediately, but Elena had learned to examine interesting salvage first. Too many valuable discoveries had been confiscated by Federation researchers who took all the credit. "Take us in closer," she ordered. "Full sensor sweep. I want to know everything about that wreckage before we contact Federation Command." The recycler moved through the debris field with careful precision, then navigated between floating hull fragments and twisted metal beams, his piloting skills keeping them clear of hazards. As they approached the main wreckage, the sensor readings became even more intriguing. Kofi looked up from his engineering station with excitement in his eyes. "Captain, these energy signatures are incredible. The whole material appears to be some kind of adaptive alloy that changes properties based on energy input. The power systems show evidence of quantum entanglement networks that could provide instantaneous communication across galactic distances." Yuki had abandoned her weapons console to study the physics readings. "The shield generators use principles I've never seen before. They don't just absorb or deflect energy. They seem to convert it into other forms and redirect it. This technology is centuries ahead of anything the Federation has developed." Elena made her decision. "Begin salvage operations. I want detailed scans of everything before we move the wreckage to our cargo base. We'll study it properly before turning it over to Federation researchers. The crew worked with renewed energy as they prepared to collect the ancient wreckage. Kofi deployed the recycler's massive cargo arms, while Yuki calibrated the sensors for detailed analysis. Ben maintained their position with micro-adjustments that kept them stable despite the gravitational effects of the debris field. As they began moving the larger pieces into their cargo base, Alina noticed something troubling on the long-range sensors. 3 Federation vessels were approaching their location at high speed, a Zephyrian science ship flanked by 2 Altarian escorts. Someone had been monitoring their communications despite their attempts at discretion. The lead ship opened a communication channel before Alina could decide how to respond. The holographic image of Admiral Thex Noru, a tall Zephyrian with pale blue skin and silver eyes, appeared on the bridge. His expression carried the polite condescension that Alina had learned to expect from Federation officials. "Captain Vasquez," the Admiral said in his precisely modulated voice, "we have detected your discovery of unknown alien artifacts. Federation protocols require immediate transfer of such materials to qualified research facilities." Alina kept her expression neutral despite her frustration. "Admiral, we were preparing to file our standard salvage report. These materials require careful handling, and our crew has the necessary experience with unknown technologies." The Admiral's silver eyes narrowed slightly. "Captain, humanity's role in the Federation is clearly defined. Salvage collection and basic recycling operations. Advanced synorchaeological analysis requires specialists with proper credentials and security clearances." Kofi caught Alina's eye and tapped his console discreetly. His message was clear. They had found something extraordinary in the wreckage, something that the Federation would immediately classify and hide away in some research facility where humans would never see it again. Alina made a decision that would change everything. "Admiral, we're experiencing some technical difficulties with our cargo transfer systems. We'll need approximately 6 hours to complete safe extraction of the materials." The Admiral's expression showed he understood the delay for what it was, an attempt to study the technology before turning it over. "Captain Vasquez, I hope you understand the serious nature of protocols regarding unknown alien artifacts. These materials could present significant dangers if handled improperly." "Of course, Admiral. We'll exercise all necessary precautions." The communication ended, and Alina turned to her crew. They had 6 hours to learn everything they could about technology that might represent humanity's only chance to move beyond their role as the Federation's janitors. Kofi was already deep in analysis of the power systems, his engineering background helping him understand concepts that Federation scientists might take months to decipher. "Captain, this quantum entanglement network isn't just for communication. It's the foundation for instantaneous power distribution and even matter transport. They built their entire civilization around technology that makes Federation warp drives look like steam engines." Yuki had connected the alien shield generators to her own research equipment, her eyes wide with amazement. These shields don't just protect against physical impacts and energy weapons. They create localized space-time distortions that can redirect gravity fields and even manipulate time flow in small areas. Combined with the right power source, this technology could make a ship virtually invincible. Ben was studying the navigation records embedded in the wreckage's computer cores. "Captain, according to these logs, this was part of a vast interstellar empire that spanned thousands of star systems. They called themselves the Architects, and they built technology that integrated with the natural forces of the universe instead of fighting against them." Alina felt pieces clicking together in her mind. What happened to them? A civilization this advanced doesn't just disappear. Ben's expression grew troubled as he translated more of the ancient records. They were destroyed by something they called the devours, machine entities that consumed entire star systems, converting all matter and energy into more of themselves. The Architects fought a war that lasted centuries, but eventually they were overwhelmed. Alina felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. "Are these devours still out there?" Before Ben could answer, Alarm klaxons began sounding throughout the ship. Yuki looked up from her console with shock and fear on her face. Captain, long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures approaching from the galactic rim. Multiple contacts. Configuration unknown, but they're moving at impossible speeds. Elena moved to the main display and felt her blood freeze. Dozens of dark shapes were emerging from the void between galaxies, their energy signatures unlike anything in Federation databases. As she watched, the contacts began spreading out in a formation that could only be described as predatory. Admiral Thex Nor's image appeared again on their communication screen, his usual composure cracking as reports flooded in from across the sector. All vessels, we have an unknown fleet approaching Federation space. All ships are ordered to rally at the Kepler Defense Station for coordinated response. Elena looked at the ancient alien technology filling their cargo bays, then at the approaching threat that had once destroyed a civilization far more advanced than the Federation. Her crew looked to her for orders, their eyes reflecting the same realization that was forming in her mind. The Federation's mighty fleets were about to face an enemy that had once conquered the galaxy. Their only hope might lie in the discarded junk that humanity had been assigned to collect, and the innovative thinking that the Federation had dismissed as crude and unpredictable. Elena straightened her shoulders and prepared to give orders that would either save the galaxy or doom them all. The Phoenix rises. Elena watched the Federation fleet assemble at Kepler Defense Station through the recycler's viewports, and she felt a mixture of awe and dread. 200 of the galaxy's most advanced warships formed battle lines in space, their sleek hulls gleaming with force fields and weapon arrays. Altarian dreadnoughts floated alongside Krogan battle cruisers, while Zephyrian science vessels provided sensor support from the rear formations. Yet something felt wrong about the sight. The Federation ships looked beautiful and sophisticated, but they all followed the same design principles: smooth curves, energy-efficient systems, and standardized weapon configurations. They had been built by civilizations that had enjoyed peace for centuries, designed more for show than for desperate warfare. Admiral Thex Nor's latest briefing confirmed Elena's fears. The approaching enemy had been identified through comparison with the ancient architect records that Ben had translated. The Devourers had returned after millennia of dormancy in the void between galaxies, and they were exactly as terrifying as the records suggested. Each Devourer ship was a massive geometric construct that absorbed energy and matter to create more of itself. They had no crews in any traditional sense. They were living machines driven by a collective intelligence that viewed all organic life as resources to be consumed. Conventional weapons only fed their growth, and their adaptive systems quickly countered any attack pattern. Elena studied the tactical displays showing the Federation's battle plan. It was textbook military strategy. Coordinated volleys, overlapping fields of fire, and systematic targeting of enemy command structures. Against any conventional enemy, it would be devastatingly effective. Against an entity that learned from every attack and grew stronger by consuming energy, it was suicide. Kofi appeared at her shoulder, his expression grim. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Federation weapon systems. Everything they have is energy-based. Plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes. Every shot they fire is just going to make the Devourers stronger." Elena nodded, her mind racing through possibilities. What about the architect technology? Can we adapt it to our systems? Kofi's eyes lit up with the excitement of an engineer facing an impossible challenge. "I've been working on that. The quantum entanglement networks can be modified to create weapons that don't feed energy to the target. Instead of destroying matter, they relocate it to different dimensional phases. The Devourers would have nothing to absorb." Yuki joined their conversation, her tablet displaying energy calculations that hurt Elena's head to look at. "I've been studying how the architect shields worked. They didn't just defend. They created reality distortions that could trap enemies in localized time loops or spatial anomalies. With the right modifications, we could turn their own adaptive abilities against them." Ben approached from the navigation station, his expression troubled. "Captain, There's something else. I've been tracking the Devourer approach patterns, and they're not random. They're specifically targeting systems with high technological development. They're coming for the Federation's core worlds first, including Earth. Elena felt anger building in her chest. Earth was still her home, still filled with billions of humans who had trusted the Federation to protect them. Now that protection was about to fail catastrophically, and humanity would suffer the consequences of decisions they'd had no part in making. She made the decision that would define humanity's future. Signal all human salvage vessels in the sector. Emergency recall, maximum priority. We're going to show the Federation what desperate innovation looks like. Over the next 18 hours, 37 human salvage ships converged on the recycler's position. They were an eclectic collection of vessels. Converted cargo haulers, modified mining ships, and purpose-built recycling platforms. None of them looked like proper warships, but they all carried crews who understood how to make something functional from discarded parts. Elena broadcast her plan to the assembled human fleet, and the response was immediate and enthusiastic. Engineers began sharing modification blueprints across quantum channels. Weapons specialists collaborated on targeting systems that had never been tested. Pilots developed formation patterns that broke every rule in the Federation tactical manual. The transformation began with the recycler itself. Kofe led teams in retrofitting their cargo bays with architect power systems, creating energy networks that ran through the ship's hull like nervous systems. The massive industrial arms designed for moving salvage were modified with phase displacement generators that could relocate enemy ships to other dimensional planes. Yuki supervised the installation of reality distortion shields throughout the human fleet. Each ship became capable of creating localized anomalies in spacetime, turning their immediate vicinity into mathematical impossibilities that even adaptive machine intelligences couldn't process. Ben worked with navigators from every human vessel to develop attack patterns based on chaos theory and quantum uncertainty. Instead of predictable formations, the human fleet would move like a storm system, apparently random but following deep mathematical principles that even the Devourer's adaptive systems couldn't anticipate. As the human modifications neared completion, the Devourer fleet arrived at the edge of the system. Elena watched through enhanced sensors as the enemy ships emerged from dimensional folds, their dark surfaces absorbing light and energy from surrounding space. They moved with terrible purpose toward the Federation battle lines. The first engagement was exactly as Elena had predicted. The Federation fleet opened fire with everything they had. Massive energy barrages that lit up space like artificial stars. For a moment, it looked like the coordinated assault might succeed. Then the Devourer ships began to glow brighter as they absorbed the incoming energy, growing larger and more complex with each hit. Admiral Thek's Nor's distress calls filled the communication channels as Federation ships found their own weapons turned against them. The Devourers had learned to reflect and amplify the energy attacks, turning the galaxy's most advanced weapons into tools of their own destruction. Elena opened a channel to the Admiral as Federation ships began exploding around the Kepler defense station. Admiral, requesting permission to engage the enemy with unconventional tactics. The Admiral's image flickered with interference from the battle raging around his command ship. Captain Vasquez, your salvage vessels are not equipped for military engagement. Retreat to minimum safe distance and prepare for evacuation operations. Elena cut the communication without responding. The Federation still didn't understand that sometimes the best solution came from those who had been dismissed as unqualified. The human fleet moved into battle formation, if it could be called that. 37 ships scattered through space in patterns that looked completely random, but followed Ben's carefully calculated chaos mathematics. Each vessel projected reality distortion fields that made them nearly impossible to target with conventional weapons. The Devourers turned their attention to these new arrivals, their collective intelligence analyzing the strange energy signatures and unpredictable movement patterns. What they found defied their accumulated experience of galactic warfare. Kofi's modified cargo arms reached out through dimensional phases to grab Devourer ships and relocate them to parallel realities where they couldn't affect the battle. Yuki's shield systems created localized time loops that trapped enemy vessels in endless recursive cycles. Ben's navigation teams led the Devourers on chases through spatial anomalies that deposited them in different star systems entirely. But the real breakthrough came when the human fleet demonstrated the fundamental difference between Federation and human approaches to problem-solving. Instead of trying to destroy their enemies with superior force, they made the Devourers irrelevant. The phase displacement weapons didn't feed energy to the enemy ships. They simply moved them somewhere else. The reality distortion fields didn't try to overcome the Devourers' adaptive abilities. They created conditions where adaptation was meaningless. The chaos pattern formations didn't present targets for the enemy to analyze. They presented mathematical impossibilities that broke the Devourers' collective intelligence. Elena watched through the recycler's sensors as Devourer ships began malfunctioning throughout the battle zone. Their adaptive systems, evolved to counter any form of direct attack, couldn't process opponents who refused to fight conventionally. Machines designed to consume energy and matter found themselves facing weapons that didn't provide either. Collective intelligences built on pattern recognition encountered chaos that had no patterns to recognize. The tide of battle turned not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the human ability to think differently when conventional solutions failed. Admiral Thex Nor's image reappeared on Elena's communication screen, his silver eyes wide with amazement. "Captain Vasquez, how are your vessels achieving these results? Our sensors show impossible energy readings from your modified systems." Elena smiled with satisfaction that went deeper than personal victory. "Admiral, we learned something from studying that ancient wreckage. Sometimes the most advanced technology isn't about building something new. It's about using what you have in ways no one expected." The Devourer fleet began retreating toward the galactic rim, their collective intelligence finally recognizing that this enemy couldn't be consumed or conquered through conventional means. As the dark ships disappeared into dimensional folds, silence settled over the battlefield. Elena looked around at her crew and felt pride that had nothing to do with military success. Kofi was already planning improvements to their improvised weapon systems. Yuki was documenting the shield modifications for future use. Ben was calculating pursuit courses in case the Devourers returned. They had started this day as the Federation's janitors, assigned to collect garbage while more qualified species handled important matters. They were ending it as the saviors of galactic civilization, having proven that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their ability to find solutions that no one else would consider. Admiral Thex Nor's final communication carried a tone that Elena had never heard from Federation officials before: genuine respect. "Captain Vasquez, the Federation Council has requested a full briefing on human tactical innovations. It appears we have significantly underestimated humanity's strategic value." Elena looked out at the stars where human salvage ships were already beginning cleanup operations, turning the debris of battle into resources for rebuilding. The galaxy had learned something important about the species they had dismissed as crude and unpredictable. Sometimes the best solution came from those who had been told they weren't qualified to find one.